Texas is in the top 4 of 2 guys in the trench. It seems like every time I see a Hayes Fawcett thing, Texas is involved, whether it's a top 4, top 7, top 10, whatever it may be, Texas seems to be involved. So let's jump in. Grayson McKeo from Pennsylvania, which is, I mean, again, guys, hitting a different state on the map. This isn't a state Texas, honestly, is really deep in the trenches with and getting guys from. So it's kind of cool that we made a final 3 here, and we actually kicked Ohio State out of this. Like, Ohio State seemed to be in the final 3 here, and he put Texas there instead. So that's really cool. So it's Texas, Notre Dame, and Penn State. And he's our last visit. And you talk about that, Gerald, that being super important. So I'll let you hit on him first.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who, when you look at his measurables, the way that it kind of computed into my mind, because he's a little bit lower on the 247 rankings and the on 3 ratings review. He looks like the opposite end of the Cam Williams spectrum, right? Cam Williams, his stock was a little down because they were worried about him getting his weight down to a kind of the right level. Where I wonder if kind of Grace McKeo's, however you say his last name, his stock is a little bit lower because, playing at 6'7", but 275 is a little light for a tackle. So I'm a big fan of his game and his ability. But ultimately, I wonder if he's going to be able to get up to that 300 pounds that Texas needs to have him at. Again, this is one of those things we've talked about. It's going to be a big offensive line class. So Texas has a guy like him who's probably somebody who maybe has a little bit longer of a development curve, but ultimately his ability, you can't teach 6'7", right? That's something that you can't teach regardless of what they are. So I'm excited to have him. And again, Texas getting that last visit, cannot be mad about it.
No, I agree. When I saw his frame, so guys, I saw this first time, Hayes Fawcett, like I said, on Twitter. I look at him and I think this looks like a tight end body type wise. That's what I thought he was, just looking at the picture. Then you get into the background and understand this guy's 6'7", 285 pounds. So he kind of does have like a tight end body frame. He's definitely going to have to put on more weight. Probably 330, 340 is what you'd like him to be at if he's going to play tackle. And Notre Dame, actually, I read an article, pitched him as like Joe Alt. And if anyone knows anything about Joe Alt came on the campus of, hey, this dude's a tight end. He actually, I believe, got recruited as a tight end. And they basically said, well, you might be a tight end, but you might be an offensive lineman as well. So I could honestly see that. Like, if he loses 15 pounds, he's like a red zone big tight end. So yeah, I don't know how Texas is looking at him. I think it says a lot. They sent Kyle Flood up to Pennsylvania to visit this kid. If they're going to use that time and resources to visit them, they see him as a definite player at the University of Texas, whatever that may be.
And that's ground that Kyle Flood is familiar with. If you know anything about Kyle Flood's past, right? His past as a head coach at Rutgers, right? So that's an area that he's familiar with. People know him. He's comfortable there. And so that's a fertile recruiting ground. Obviously, Kyle Flood, the name speaks for itself in the offensive line world. But he's a guy who, again, Texas has an opportunity to really have an elite class. This is going to feel, I think, hopefully, and fans are hoping at the end of this cycle, it's going to look like that first big offensive line class that Texas brought in. I imagine the vibes right now are pretty similar, and that's what Texas is hoping to build. And you see these two pieces we're talking about here as a big piece of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you. I think this guy is more obviously Max Wright, but I think he's got more tools than a Max Wright, honestly. They're very similar, though. And I'd love to have him, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be hard to pull him out of the the backyard of Penn State. Right now, I think Penn State leads. I think Notre Dame's probably second. I think we're third because we also got in late here, guys. We offered him a week ago. We offered him. So that's crazy, too, that you're able to get a visit just based off a week. So that's a really good sign if we are able to land him. And like you said, Gerald, last visit does matter, seems to matter, especially in high school recruiting. So, you never know here. I would love to get him, obviously, but this is, again, a Max Wright type of guy. He'll sit on the bench for 2 years and then he'll play. I don't expect him to come in and play right away, but you need those guys. And you'd like to have 2 to 3 of those guys. Where do you have one in the boat? If you can land 2 more, I feel really confident about this class.
Yep. Yeah, you add them to the elite guys that Texas is, and those 5-star guys that can come in and play within a year or so, and then you have guys like this that are going to sit and kind of develop into their grown man bodies, and it's the right way to build the class. It's the right way to build a room, and Texas has done it really well already.
Yeah, so next up, we have another offensive lineman, Malachi Lee from Hawaii, 139th in the country, according to the 247 composite, 10 offensive tackle and number 2 player in Hawaii. I think it's pretty crazy to see here that Texas made the top 4 along with Michigan and a couple others. And Michigan, I believe, does lead here. But USC is someone that usually, is able to get someone out of Hawaii. And they didn't even make the top 4 for this guy. So that's crazy to me. And Texas has been on this guy for a very long time, since 2022. We're talking 3 years since they offered this guy. So a very long time. What do you think about him, Gerald?
Yeah, Texas has been on the upswing for the Polynesian players, right? Like the ability to get in with those guys. Yeah, Jake Longy on the staff for a long time and kind of helped Texas build inroads with a lot of these Polynesian players you see now. We talk about Leon Galefau as a guy who for Texas is going to be a big player next year. And so like a guy like this coming in, I was laughing at his visit schedule and it took me a minute to figure out like why he's only taking like 1 visit a month. And then it clicked like, oh, he's got to fly from freaking Hawaii to come visit. So I wish Texas had that June 20th visit. He's already been predicted, got a couple of crystal balls to Michigan, and Michigan does have that last visit. So that isn't the greatest feeling in the world. But when you look at, what the kind of guys that Texas wants, we talk about having those ready-made guys that can come in. Offensive tackle at 6'6", 320 is exactly the kind of guy that you could slot in on day one if you need to. He's got that kind of frame. He's got that kind of skill set. He's got really good feet. His ability to kind of extend blocks and create that momentum at the offensive line position. Again, Texas making inroads in Hawaii. This would be like the second kid in the last like 3 or 4 cycles that they've landed from Hawaii. And Hawaii routinely will put out 2 or 3 guys every couple of years that turn out to be really good ball players. So I'm not mad about it at all. Again, I think it's probably Michigan leads the pack right now, but ultimately Texas's ability to even get in the conversation with these kids is a big, big win.
No, 100%. And Johnny Nansen obviously has helped with that as well. He's done a really good job recruiting the West Coast, and that includes Hawaii. I think Sark, obviously having a little bit of inroads in California and then out on the West Coast helps that as well. And I agree. This guy's more of a ready-made player. I still don't think he's obviously not a Felix Ojo or John Turntine come in play, I think, right away, but I could see him sit for a year and then play. I think he's that type of player. And he's starting to learn to be more aggressive. That's the thing, too. If you look on his tape, he's much more of a finesse type player right now, in my opinion. I don't see him like really murdering people out there on the football field yet. But Kyle Flood, I think, can get him there. And the cool thing about these 2 guys that we're talking about as well, I love a basketball background with offensive linemen because it helps with your footwork and stuff like that. Cam Williams had that. So having these 2 guys having a basketball background, I think really helps. And like you said, I think Michigan leads here. It's hard to recruit against a team like Michigan because they're really good in the trenches. They're one of those 4 to 5 schools that consistently turn out offensive linemen or turn them out. So Texas is, fighting a little bit of an uphill battle here, but it does help too. Texas was super early on this guy. We're talking 3 years now that he was offered, where it's the total opposite of Grayson McKeel from Pennsylvania. We were on this guy super, super early, basically as soon as he stepped foot in high school. So I do think that helps out a little bit.
Absolutely. And, Texas has done a really good job of fostering the relationship, of building that. And ultimately, if it doesn't work out, even with this kind of guy, and I'll just go ahead and say it, like sometimes you're looking at to be a guy's second first love or second love in the era of the transfer portal. So being able to say like, hey, if things don't work out at Michigan, there's probably a spot for you at Texas. There's ultimately another opportunity there as well. So I'm a big fan of his game. Again, Texas is going to have a really good offensive line class. I don't know who's going to make up the final probably 5 guys of that group, but regardless, Texas is going to have a big group, and I'd love to have Malachi Lee in that number.
100%. I'd love to have him as well. That does it for the 2 guys in the trenches. We really appreciate you guys being here, and recruiting is going to keep coming down the pipeline like crazy. You're probably going to get a lot of commitments in June, July, and August as the season comes up. So please stick around, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe. We'll come in with any breaking news of any commitments that do commit to the University of Texas. We've had 3 in the last month, and I expect that to probably double and triple in the next couple months.